HOA cops pulled a gun on my daughter. She's a secret FBI agent. Asterisk. Boom. A gunshot split the air like a thunderclap, shattering the lazy calm of our suburban street. My coffee mug slipped from my hands, crashing to the kitchen floor as I bolted to the window, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Outside, in our sun-dappled driveway, stood my 24-year-old daughter. Mia, hands raised, her face eerily calm. Across from her, a man in a garish orange vest or neighborhood's self-proclaimed HOA security goon gripped a pistol with trembling hands, his eyes wild with panic. He was shouting, voice cracking like a teenager in a bad action flick. "Stay back, or I'll shoot." Little did he know, Mia wasn't just my sweet, bookish daughter who loved baking cookies with me on Sundays. She was a secret FBI agent, trained to stare down threats far deadlier than a power-tripping busybody with a gun. This wasn't just a petty neighborhood. Spat, it was about to explode into the most jaw-dropping showdown our sleepy cul-de-sac had ever witnessed. Let me set the scene. It was a picture-perfect Saturday morning in Willow Creek, a cookie-cutter suburban haven where the biggest drama was usually Mrs. Jenkins' yappy chihuahua or a misplaced recycling bin. The sun was shining, kids were riding bikes, and the smell of fresh-cut grass hung in the air. Mia was home for the weekend, visiting from D.C., where she'd told us she worked as a data analyst for some vague government contractor. I always suspected there was more to her story, those cryptic late-night phone calls. The way she'd dodge questions about her job, but I figured she'd tell me when she was ready. She was my only child, my pride and joy with her dad's quick wit and my stubborn streak. Seeing her now, standing in our driveway, facing a gun, I felt the world tilt under my feet. Mia had pulled up in a sleek black rental car, temporary ride while her usual sedan was in the shop. She was unloading groceries, bags of apples, cereal, and that fancy oat milk. She loved humming some pop song I didn't recognize. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy bun, and she wore a casual hoodie and jeans, looking every bit like the college kid she'd been just a few years ago. That's when trouble rolled in, literally, on a worry golf cart. Greg, the HOA's resident wannabe cop, screeched to a stop at the edge of our driveway. His orange vest glowed like a traffic cone, and his clipboard was clutched like a badge of honor. Greg was the kind of guy who lived for power. It's a self-appointed sheriff of Willow Creek. He'd ticket you for a lawn gnome an inch too tall, lecture you about mailbox paint colors, and once fined a family for excessive holiday lights. Everyone hated him, but no one dared challenge his reign of petty terror. Greg hopped off his cart, already puffing out his chest. He barked, pointing at Mia like she'd just keyed his car. "That vehicle's illegally parked?" Mia paused, a bag of groceries in her arms, and raised an eyebrow. "It's in my mom's driveway," she said, her tone polite but firm. "It's not blocking anything." Greg's face turned beet red. He wasn't used to backtalk, especially not from someone he clearly saw as a kid. He stormed closer, jabbing a finger at the car. "HOA rules state no unregistered vehicles in visible areas. You're in violation, and I'm writing you up." Mia set the groceries down, her movements slow and deliberate, and I could see the faintest hint of amusement in her eyes. "It's a rental, sir. I'll move it if it's an issue," she offered, clearly trying to de-escalate. But Greg was on a roll, drunk on his own authority. He stepped into her personal space, close enough that I could see Mia tense from my vantage point on the porch. "You think you can disrespect me?" he snarled. "I run this neighborhood." Neighbors were starting to notice now, poking their heads out of windows or pausing their lawnmowers. I gripped the porch railing, debating whether to run out or call 911. Then, in a move that sucked the air out of my lungs, Greg reached for his hip and yanked out a handgun, pointing it square at Mia's chest. "Move the car, or I'll make you," he screamed, his voice shrilled with rage. The world seemed to slow down. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, my mind screaming, "This can't be happening." Mia didn't flinch. Her hands rose slowly, palms out, but her eyes locked onto Greg's with an intensity I'd never seen before. It wasn't fear, it was control. "Sir, lower your weapon," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Greg laughed, a nervous, unhinged sound, and waved the gun wildly. "You don't tell me what to do?" he spat, stepping closer. That's when I noticed Mia's right hand drift subtly toward her waistband, where her hoodie concealed something. I'd later learn was her FBI-issued sidearm. My daughter wasn't just calm. She was ready to end this if she had to. And Greg, poor clueless Greg, had no idea he'd just picked a fight with the wrong woman. The air crackled with tension as Greg, red-faced and puffed up like a cartoon villain, jabbed his finger at Mia's rental car. "You think you can just ignore the rules?" he bellowed, his voice echoing across the cul-de-sac. Mia, still holding a bag of groceries, set it down on the hood of her car, her movements slow and deliberate. "Sir," I said. "I'll move it," she repeated, her tone calm but edged with steel. I was watching from the porch, my hands gripping the railing so tightly my knuckles turned white. Neighbors were starting to gather. Mr. Thompson paused his lawnmower. Mrs. Jenkins peeked through her blinds, and a couple of kids on bikes stopped to stare. Some pulled out their phones, sensing drama brewing. This was Willow Creek, where nothing exciting ever happened. And they weren't about to miss the show. Greg, though, was oblivious to the growing audience. He thrived on this, being the big man, the one who made people cower. He stepped closer to Mia, close enough that I could see her shoulders tense, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "You kids have no respect?" he spat, ignoring that Mia was a grown woman, not some teenager. "This is my neighborhood, and you'll do what I say." His voice was getting louder, more unhinged, and I felt a cold dread settle in my gut. I wanted to run out, to scream at him to back off, but something about Mia's posture stopped me. She wasn't scared. She was assessing, like a predator sizing up prey. Then, in a move that made my stomach lurch, Greg's hand flew to his hip, and he yanked out a handgun, pointing it straight at Mia's chest. "Move the car, or I'll make you," he screamed, his voice cracking with a mix of rage and panic. The crowd gasped, phones zooming in, capturing every second of this nightmare. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, my mind screaming, "This can't be real." Greg's gun was no toy, it was a real, gleaming pistol, and his trembling hands made it even more terrifying. He was no trained officer. He was an HOA volunteer with a power trip and a concealed carry permit, and that made him dangerous. Mia didn't flinch. Her hand stayed raised, but her eyes locked onto Greg's, unblinking like she was staring into his soul. "Sir, lower your weapon," she said, her voice steady, commanding, cutting through the chaos like a knife. It wasn't a plight, it was an order. Greg laughed, a nervous, jagged sound, and waved the gun wildly, his bravado crumbling under Mia's. "Calm, you don't tell me what to do," he shouted, stepping even closer, the barrel now inches from her. I could see his finger twitching near the trigger, and my heart pounded so hard I thought I'd pass out. Neighbors were whispering frantically now, some backing away, others filming with shaking hands. "Call the cops," Mrs. Jenkins hissed to her husband, but no one moved, just stunned by the unfolding drama. What Greg didn't see, what none of us saw at first, was Mia's right hand, subtly drifting toward her waistband. Where her hoodie concealed something I'd later learn was her FBI-issued sidearm. She wasn't just standing there. She was ready to end this if it came to that. Her training was kicking in, every move calculated. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice low but firm, each word dripping with authority. Greg, too, caught up in his own ego, didn't notice the shift in her demeanor, the way her body angled slightly, positioning herself for action. "I'm in charge here," he yelled, his face now slick with sweat. He took another step, the gun shaking in his grip, and I swear I stopped breathing. One wrong move, one twitch of his finger, and this could end in tragedy. Mia's eyes flicked to the crowd, then back to Greg, assessing every detail, the distance between them, the angle of the gun, the neighbors' positions. She was in control, even if Greg didn't know it. "You don't want to do this," she said, her tone almost gentle, like she was giving him one last chance to back down. But Greg was too far gone, drunk on his own power. "You're going to learn to respect the rules," he screamed, his voice breaking as he jabbed the gun forward, inches from her face. The crowd let out a collective gasp, and I felt my knees buckle. I wanted to scream, to run to her, but Mia's calm kept me rooted. She was no damsel, she was a trained agent, and Greg was about to find out just how outmatched he was. The standoff felt like it stretched for hours, though only seconds had passed. Greg's gun trembled in his sweaty grip, his face a mix of rage and fear as he screamed at Mia to comply. The neighbors' phones were rolling, capturing every heart-stopping moment, their whispers a low hum in the background. Mrs. Jenkins clutched her husband's arm, muttering, "He's lost it," while Mr. Thompson edged closer, torn between intervening and staying safe. Kids on bikes stood frozen, wide-eyed, as the cul-de-sac turned into a stage for a real-life thriller. I was paralyzed on the porch, my nails digging into the railing, praying Mia's calm meant she had a plan. Then, in a move so smooth it felt choreographed, Mia broke the stalemate. Her right hand, steady as stone, reached into her hoodie and pulled out a leather wallet. With a flick, she flipped it open, revealing a gleaming badge that caught the sunlight like a beacon. "FBI," she said, her voice ringing with authority. "Drop the weapon now." The word FBI hit like a shockwave. Greg's eyes widened, his mouth falling open as if the air had been sucked out of him. The gun wavered in his hand, his bravado crumbling like a sandcastle. The crowd erupted in gasps, phones zooming in to capture the badge's golden eagle, glinting with undeniable legitimacy.
HOA.
A teenager muttered, his phone shaking as he filmed. "She's a Fed." Greg's face drained of color, his voice a stuttering mess. "You're lying, you're just a kid," he stammered. But the badge told a different story. Mia held it steady, her gaze locked on him, unblinking, like a lion staring down a hyena. "Last warning," she said, her tone ice cold. Her hand now resting lightly on her waistband, where her concealed sidearm waited. The crowd held its breath, sensing the power shift. Greg's eyes darted from the badge to Mia's face, then to the growing crowd, realizing he was the villain in this viral moment. His hands shook harder, the gun dipping slightly, but his ego clung to control. "This is my neighborhood," he spat, though his voice cracked, betraying his fear. Mia didn't budge. She stepped forward, just one step, closing the gap between them. "You're threatening a federal agent," she said, each word deliberate, slicing through Greg's bluster. "Drop the weapon, or you'll be arrested." The authority in her voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard from my daughter. The girl who still called me for pancake recipes, who laughed at cheesy rom-coms. This was a stranger, a warrior, and it sent chills down my spine. The neighbors were buzzing now, some whispering, "Is she really FBI?" while others nodded, piecing together Mia's quiet confidence. Mrs. Jenkins, clutching her phone, whispered to her husband, "I knew there was something about her." Greg's bravado collapsed. His shoulders slumped, and the gun lowered, his hands trembling so violently I thought he'd drop it. Mia seized the moment. In a flash, she closed the distance, her movements precise, almost balletic. She disarmed him with a swift, practiced motion, securing the pistol and stepping back, her eyes never leaving his. "Sit on the curb," she ordered, her voice calm but unyielding. Greg, now a deflated balloon, obeyed, sinking to the ground, his orange vest looking ridiculous against his defeated posture. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some cheering softly, others still filming, knowing this was gold for X and YouTube. "That was insane," the kid shouted, his phone still pointed at Mia. I was stunned, my mind reeling. My Mia? An FBI agent? Badge, the confidence, the way she handled Greg, it all clicked, yet it felt surreal. Neighbors swarmed closer, bombarding her with questions, but Mia stayed focused, securing the scene like she'd done this 100 times. She glanced at me briefly, her eyes softening for a split second, as if to say, "I'm okay, Mom." But I wasn't okay. I was proud, terrified, and completely lost. Trying to reconcile my daughter with this fearless agent who'd just turned our cul-de-sac into a crime scene. As Greg sat defeated on the curb, his orange vest, looking more clownish than commanding, the wail of police sirens cut through the air. 2 squad cars screeched into Willow Creek, lights flashing, tires squealing on the asphalt. Still filming, parted like the Red Sea as officers jogged toward the scene, hands on their holsters. Mia, calm as ever, stepped forward to meet them, her FBI badge still in hand. She spoke with a quiet authority, explaining the situation in clipped, professional tones. Armed civilian, reckless endangerment, weapon secured. She handed over Greg's pistol, her movements precise, like she'd done this 100 times. The lead officer, a stern woman with a buzz cut, examined her badge, nodded, and radioed for backup to process Greg. I stood on the porch, my legs shaky, trying to process the fact that my daughter was commanding a crime scene in our driveway. Greg, now, a sweating, stammering mess, tried to spin a story. She threatened me. I was protecting the neighborhood, he whined, his voice high-pitched and desperate. But the neighbors' videos, already circulating on their phones, told the truth. Mrs. Jenkins, clutching her phone like a lifeline, marched up to an officer and said, "I got it all right here. He pulled a gun on her for no reason." Mr. Thompson chimed in, "He's been bullying us for years." The officers watched the footage, their faces hardening. Greg was cuffed, his protests about HOA authority falling on deaf ears as they led him to a squad car. One neighbor, a teenage boy named Jake, couldn't resist shouting, "Busted," as Greg was shoved into the back seat, earning a few chuckles from the crowd. Once the police took over, Mia turned to me, her eyes softening. "Mom, let's go inside," she said, guiding me into the house. My hands were trembling as we sat. At the kitchen table, the broken coffee mug still scattered on the floor. I looked at her. My Mia, the girl who still texted me Cat Mimson, demanded answers. She sighed, running a hand through her dark hair, and began, "Mom, I'm not a data analyst. I've been with the FBI for 2 years, working undercover." The words hit like a tidal wave. She explained how she joined the Bureau after college, drawn to its mission but unable to tell us to keep us safe. Her training was grueling hand-to-hand combat, firearms, surveillance, high-stakes ops. She'd worked cases I'd never know about, tracking criminals in shadows I couldn't imagine. "I didn't want you to worry," she said, her voice cracking slightly, the first sign of vulnerability I'd seen all day. I was proud, terrified, and overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, tears welling. She reached for my hand, her grip steady. "Because you'd have called me every day asking if I was okay," she said with a small smile. She wasn't wrong, I would have. She shared snippets of her life. Late-night stakeouts, coded messages, the weight of secrecy. I pictured her, facing dangers far worse than Greg, and my heart ached. "Are you safe?" I whispered. She nodded, but her eyes held a truth she wouldn't voice. Her job was never safe. I pulled her into a hug, holding her like she was 5 again. Not an agent who just disarmed a maniac outside. The neighborhood was buzzing. Neighbors clustered in driveways, replaying videos and debating what they'd seen. Mrs. Jenkins knocked on our door, her face a mix of awe and excitement. "Mia, you're a hero," she gushed, showing us her phone, where the video already had thousands of views on X. "This is going viral," she said, practically bouncing. Mia groaned, hating the attention, but I could see a flicker of pride in her eyes. The community was rallying, not just around Mia, but against the HOA's overreach. Mr. Thompson started a petition to reform the HOA, and by evening, half the street had signed it. Greg's reign of terror had backfired spectacularly, uniting Willow Creek in a way I'd never seen. As the police wrapped up, Mia spoke with them again, ensuring the case was airtight. I overheard an officer say, "Nice work, Agent," and my chest swelled with pride, even as fear lingered. Mia was my daughter, but she was also a stranger, a woman who carried a badge and a gun, who faced danger without flinching. As we cleaned up the kitchen, I asked, "Will you be okay?" She smiled, squeezing my shoulder. "I'm trained for this, Mom, but I need you to keep this quiet." I nodded, though I knew the story was already out of our hands, spreading like wildfire. Online. By nightfall, Willow Creek was no longer just our sleepy suburb. It was the epicenter of a viral storm. The neighbors' videos, shaky but crystal clear, exploded across X, YouTube, and every corner of the internet. Headlines screamed, "HOA, goon humiliated by secret FBI agent. Neighborhood tyrant gets owned." One clip, posted by Mrs. Jenkins' teenage grandson, Jake, hit 3 million views in hours, showing Mia's badge reveal in slow-motion glory. The comments were a frenzy. This chick is a badass. Read one. HOAs need to be banned, said another. A third joked. Greg thought he was Rambo, but Mia's the real deal. I scrolled through X on my phone, jaw dropping at the flood of memes. Greg's orange vest photoshopped onto crying babies, Mia's badge gleaming like a superhero emblem. The internet had turned our cul-de-sac drama into a global sensation. Back home, the neighborhood buzzed with a mix of awe and rebellion. Mrs. Jenkins, now a local celebrity for her viral video, organized a block meeting that evening. Over lemonade and cookies in her backyard, residents vented years of HOA frustrations. Greg fined me $200 for a birdhouse. Mr. Thompson fumed. He told me my mailbox was too blue. Another neighbor chimed in. Mia's takedown had lit a fuse, and Willow Creek was done with petty tyranny. Mr. Thompson drafted a petition to overhaul the HOA, demanding transparency and an end to their security patrols. By midnight, nearly every household had signed, and a group of moms started a group chat called Willow Creek Rebels to plan next steps. It was like Mia's badge had awakened a sleeping giant. The HOA board, caught off guard, scrambled too. Save face. By Sunday morning, they'd issued a groveling apology on their website, announcing Greg's termination and the immediate disbanding of their security team. We are committed to rebuilding trust, the statement read. But the comments section was ruthless. Too late. And fire the whole board. The local news picked up the story, with a reporter interviewing Mrs. Jenkins outside her house. Mia's a hero, she said, beaming. She showed us we don't have to live in fear of these HOA bullies. The segment aired that night, complete with Jake's video, cementing Mia's status as a legend. Mia, though, hated the spotlight. She spent the evening at our kitchen table, sipping tea, her phone buzzing with notifications she ignored. This is why I keep my job secret, she groaned, rubbing her temples. I asked how she felt about going viral. It's a nightmare, she said, half laughing. My boss is going to have my head for this. But beneath her frustration, I saw a flicker of pride. She'd stood up to a bully, protected our community, and walked away unscathed. I pushed her to let me share the story on my YouTube channel, promising to keep her identity vague. After some convincing, she's stubborn like me, she agreed, saying, just don't make me sound like Wonder Woman. I laughed, but to me, she was exactly that. The online reaction wasn't just about Maya, it was a rallying cry against HOAs everywhere. X threads overflowed with stories of power-tripping boards. From $500 fines for unapproved flower beds to threats over kids. Chalk drawings. Mia's my hero, one user posted. Time to dismantle these mini dictatorships? Another started a hashtag HOA Rebellion, which trended for days. YouTubers jumped in with reaction channels dissecting the video and true crime creators, narrating the HOA goon takedown like a Hollywood thriller. One influencer even mailed us a t-shirt reading FBI greater than HOA, which Mia reluctantly posed in for a photo, rolling her eyes. For me, the fallout was personal. I'd always seen Mia as my little girl, the one who'd beg for extra sprinkles on her cupcakes. Now I saw her strength, her courage, and the weight she carried. I couldn't stop worrying about her job. Would this blow her cover? She reassured me, saying the FBI was handling it, but I knew her life was riskier than I'd ever imagined. Still, I was bursting with pride. She'd turned a terrifying moment into a catalyst for change, and our neighborhood was stronger for it. This story is for my YouTube family, with Mia's blessing, to inspire you to stand up to petty tyrants, whether they're waving a gun or a rule book. Willow Creek's fight isn't over, but Mia showed us what's possible when you don't back down. Subscribe for more wild true stories, and drop a comment. Have you faced an HOA nightmare? What would you do if a Greg pulled a stunt like this? Smash that like button, share this video, and let's keep the hashtag HOA Rebellion going. See you in the next one.